Across Louisiana, Florida, and Arkansas, thermal cameras, military-grade night vision, audio recorders, and boots-on-the-ground investigations have collected evidence that all points toward the same unsettling conclusion. A powerful creature, capable of tearing apart animals weighing over 200 pounds, is operating in these wetlands, and it has been doing so for a long time. Nobody knew the scale of it until an investigation team walked directly into the proof, the feeding ground deep in an Arkansas swamp. The team stumbles onto a scene that looks like the aftermath of an ongoing operation. Bones of deer and wild hogs lie scattered across the ground, large animals, some over 200 pounds, ripped apart and left in pieces. The remains are not from one kill. They are spread over a wide area, some partially eaten, others stripped nearly clean, joints broken open, bones cracked for marrow. This is not the work of a bear, a cougar, or any known predator operating alone. The pattern and the sheer volume of kills suggest something with apex-level strength has been using this location repeatedly for months. 3:00 a.m. Thermal capture, Louisiana wetlands. 48 hours later, at 3 a.m. in a Louisiana marsh, a thermal drone picks up a massive heat signature moving through thick underbrush. That's a pretty big heat signature, but look at the shape. From above, the figure moves upright, like a person running, then suddenly drops to all fours and disappears beneath a tree canopy. It moves like a person running, then it drops to all fours. At 3 a.m., miles from any road or house, there is no logical reason for a human to be out there, except the investigation team itself. The audio match in the final phase of the investigation. An audio recording captured in the field is played alongside an anonymous witness recording sent to the team separately. I want to show you something that was sent to me. And the person that sent this to me, they want to remain anonymous, but they made this recording out in the woods. I want to see what you think. The two recordings, made on different nights, by different people who never coordinated, line up almost perfectly in frequency, cadence, and tonal quality. When both are compared against a comprehensive database of every known wildlife vocalization, mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians native to the region, nothing matches. The sound does not belong to any documented animal. Bragg Road ghost lights. Southeast Texas. On a flat dirt track known as Bragg Road, locals have reported glowing orbs hovering, drifting, and streaking across the sky at impossible speeds for nearly a century. Phil, the team skeptic, arrives determined to find a natural explanation beneath decades of ghost stories. Jess, the paranormal specialist, has already studied every witness account and isn't betting on headlights. A mile into the road in total darkness, Jess deploys a highly sensitive thermal imager. Considering how dark it is, I'm eager to break out our highly sensitive thermal imager. Anything that displaces heat, even strange balls of light, should show up here. Phil straps on military-grade night vision goggles operating in the infrared spectrum. If anything displaces heat out here, these instruments catch it. Jess spots it first, a distinct, luminous object, not a reflection, shoots straight upward from inside the swamp. At the exact same moment, 300 yards down the road, another phosphorescent glow streaks horizontally through the darkness. Phil's head snaps toward it. 2 anomalies. 2 locations. Simultaneous. Evan's camera captures a glowing object moving like a controlled fireball before vanishing. Phil replays the footage 3 times. That was not a bat, and that is not what I saw. It almost looked like a fireball glowing, and the way it disappeared like that at the end. We've officially seen some weird lights, and we got it on tape. The lights move deeper into the swamp toward an area where witnesses have reported them congregating. The team follows by airboat into the wetlands, miles from any road. Phil picks up another hit on the FLIR, a light shooting past at 5 feet off the ground, lateral, deliberate, then vanishing into the trees. Jess is firm. Not a firefly, not a bat, identical to what they filmed earlier on Bragg Road, a firefly or a bat. It was glowing just like that light I saw on Bragg Road. To test the sightings, Jess drives a Jeep past the entrance to Bragg Road on Highway 787 while Phil films from a mile away. The result: a single drifting light that matches Evan's footage almost exactly. Distant headlights distorted by the road's flat geometry can explain some of the Saratoga lights. Methane fireballs rising from the swamp may account for others, but immediately after the controlled test, Phil's camera glitches that he sees a light, not on the road, not from a car, floating above the tree line, rising and drifting over the canopy. One of the team's cameras shuts down completely. Every frog and animal in the swamp erupts in sudden noise at the same moment. Witnesses have long reported that the ghost lights can disable electronics and even automobiles. Phil saw something overhead that his own debunking experiment cannot explain. That he admits it on camera. What he saw was not headlights. He is not ready to call it a ghost, but it was real. It was physical and it remains unidentified. Do you really think you saw something weird tonight? I really do think that I saw the Saratoga lights. Well, I think I saw what people claim to be the Saratoga lights, and I got it on tape, and it was you driving by earlier making that flash and disappear. The unexplained lights are compelling, but what surfaces next in the swamps of Louisiana and Florida shifts the investigation from light anomalies to something far more disturbing, because the thermal cameras start picking up figures that walk on two legs, the swamp creatures. Louisiana's Honey Island swamp. Dana Holyfield shares film footage her grandfather Harlan shot decades ago. It shows a large bipedal figure walking through the frame, upright, broad-shouldered, moving in a way that matches no documented animal in the region. Dana has spent her life continuing her grandfather's investigation. When she describes his first encounter, her voice lowers. The thing he remembered most was the eyes, big, amber-colored, just looking at him. The body was covered in long, dingy hair. My grandfather stood 6'4" and this creature was taller. Big broad shoulders and long arms. And when it turned to run, it ran off on 2 feet. The team deploys 8 game cameras around the coordinates of the most recent sighting and treks deep into the wetlands. Fresh prints appear by the water's edge, large, clear, heading inland. Game calls draw back sounds that match no known species, sending 200-pound wild hogs stampeding through the brush in terror. The breakthrough comes at 3 a.m. on the Pearl River. Phil launches a thermal drone. It captures a large heat signature moving through the underbrush. From above, the shape looks exactly like a person running, then it drops to all fours, tucks under a tree, and the signature compresses to nothing. The team goes in on foot. The smell hits first, overpowering. They find vertebrae and scattered bones, but the creature is already gone, faster than anyone on foot can follow. The hair sample Phil recovers comes back from the lab as 100% wild hog. The game cameras captured raccoons and terrified boars, but the bipedal shape on the thermal drone moving at 3 a.m., miles from any civilization, remains unexplained. And Harlan Holyfield's film still shows something walking upright through that swamp. 600 miles east, Florida Everglades. The same pattern repeats. The Seminole tribe long told of a creature they called the skunk ape, a foul-smelling giant stalking the wetlands. The first documented sighting dates to 1818-IN 1974. 2 police officers confirmed they encountered a 7-foot creature and opened fire. Hundreds of reports since then describe the same thing. 7 feet tall, over 400 pounds. Reeking of skunk and rotten eggs. On an island in the Canaveral marshes, Phil and Heather find a ground nest, a 5-foot depression pressed into the vegetation. The smell is unmistakable. In a nearby tree, a second nest contains prawns laid flat with intentional arrangement, fish scales, consumed bird remains. We got fish scales, some bones, some wings. All these prawns lay perfectly sideways here. So laid with design. Absolutely. Something laid these up here. Wildlife experts later confirm it was not constructed by any known bird species. Their assessment: it appears similar to nests built by large primates, then the DNA results arrive on hair samples recovered from a second ground nest found during a nighttime thermal pursuit. The analysis comes back, most likely human. Phil takes it as confirmation that the creature is a known animal. But Heather points out what makes the result genuinely unsettling: human and great ape DNA overlap by 98.8%, with an imperfect field sample. That margin dissolves, the result doesn't confirm human. It sits in a gray zone that could mean almost anything. 2 states, 2 swamps, thermal footage of a bipedal shape that drops to all fours. Nests showing primate-level intelligence. DNA results that refuse to close the case in either direction. The pattern is building, and the final investigation, in a small Arkansas town where something has been killing livestock and driving families from their homes, is where it all converges: the Fouke monster. Fouke, Arkansas Mayor Terry Purvis sits in Fouke City Hall, 2 minutes from the local Monster Mart, and he is not smiling. Purvis has been mayor of this small Arkansas town for years. He has fielded calls about the Fouke monster, the creature made famous by the 1970s cult classic The Legend of Boggy Creek. For as long as anyone can remember, the movie was set right here. Real witnesses reenacted their own encounters on camera, but what Purvis is dealing with now has nothing to do with Hollywood. There's no doubt in my mind, Purvis says. He leans forward. He's known these witnesses for 30, 40 years. Their stories have never changed, not once. Not a single detail has shifted. Families have moved away, not because of a movie from half a century ago, but because of what they've encountered in the past few months: livestock killed in ways that don't match any local predator. Howls at night that stop conversation dead. Residents who refuse to go outside after dark. The town benefits from the legend, tourism, the Monster Mart, the cultural identity, but Purvis makes one thing clear: people are scared. I just want to make sure my residents are safe. That's what I got you here for. People are scared. We've had incidents where this thing has killed livestock. There's a lot of people won't even go out at night now. And we've actually had people move away from here because they're scared. Then he plays an audio recording. Someone made it in the woods near town and sent it to him anonymously. They wanted their name kept out of it. The mayor hits play. The recording fills the room, a screaming, guttural sound that rises and falls with an almost vocal quality, like something between a primate shriek and a noise no animal should be able to produce. Phil stares at the speaker, jaw tight. Heather doesn't move. Purvis watches their reactions carefully. We hunt, we fish, we're constantly out in the woods down here, the mayor says into the silence that follows. I've never heard anything like that in my life. That night, Phil and Heather carry the recording deep into the swamp on a game collar. The plan is direct: play the sound and see what answers. The swamp is black around them. The only illumination comes from their headlamps and the pale glow of the FLIR screen. Phil hits the button, the guttural scream rolls out across the water, bounces off the tree line, and disappears into the wetland. They wait. The swamp goes quiet in a way that feels deliberate, frogs cutting off mid-call, insects dropping silent, as though every living thing in the area just stopped to listen. Something moves in the darkness. Phil catches it on the edge of his peripheral vision: motion in the tree line, direction uncertain, gone before he can swing the camera. Then Heather spots it, a game trail materializing in front of them, not old, not overgrown. The grass is flattened in a clear path. Branches are broken and bent at passage height. Whatever came through here was tall enough to push through head-high vegetation. This trail is fresh. Whatever walked it did so recently, possibly tonight. They follow. The trail leads deeper into the wetland, past standing water, through brush so thick the thermal camera struggles to penetrate it. Phil sweeps the FLIR left and right, picking up nothing but cold vegetation. Then the bones. Phil's flashlight beam catches the first scatter, pale fragments against dark mud. He stops walking. Heather nearly walks into him. The beam moves slowly across the ground and the scope of what they've found becomes clear: deer remains. Wild hog remains. Not a single carcass, multiple kills spread across a wide area, some partially consumed, others stripped nearly clean. Bones cracked, joints separated. A feeding ground that has been used repeatedly. Phil's voice goes quiet. Holy, we're in a feeding ground. Look at this. Well, we're in a feeding ground. We're in a feeding ground. He crouches, picks up a hog bone, and turns it over in his hands. The break pattern is violent. These are not small animals. A mature wild hog carries over 200 pounds of dense muscle, armed with tusks, built low to the ground, and evolved to survive predation from bears, coyotes, and alligators. Taking one down requires overwhelming force. Taking multiple down in the same location over time requires something that dominates this ecosystem. Phil looks up at Heather. You have to be strong to take down a wild hog. Heather is already moving through the site with the thermal camera, documenting every bone cluster, every drag mark, every indication of repeated use. Phil photographs individual remains. The smell is different here, not the sulfur rot of the swamp, but something organic and older. The smell of a place where large animals have been consumed and left to decompose. They catalog what they can and pull back to regroup. The feeding ground is real. It is recent. And it demands a larger search. The next morning, Phil and Heather organize a community effort. 3 groups will sweep the swamps on both sides of the Sulphur River, working inward toward the wetland center. Each searcher carries a whistle, 1 blast for a discovery, 2 blasts to keep moving. Mayor Purvis takes a team upriver by boat to a stretch of bank with a concentration of recent sightings. Heather addresses the volunteers before they move out. We know why we're the natural state. We respect the land, the people, and the animals, even the unknown ones. Today we turn doubters into believers. The groups push in. Evidence starts accumulating within the first hour. 1 team finds hair samples snagged on low branches, thick, coarse, noticeably different from the fur of any common local species. Phil bags them immediately. Another group discovers mussel shells far inland from any water source, an unusual finding that matches a food pattern a local tracker named Doyle says he regularly encounters when searching for the Fouke monster. They're heading in the right direction. Then Mayor Purvis radios in from the river, his voice tight with controlled excitement. His team found a footprint about 45 yards into the swamp, 3 distinct toes pressed deep into the mud with extraordinary definition. The print shows the front of the foot only, like something sprinting, vaulting, the ball of its foot slamming into the earth with tremendous downward force. It is fresh, hours old at most. Like it was chasing dinner. Purvis says he was heading inland just right up the Sulphur River. Here. We've been in about 45 yards like he was chasing dinner. He was heading inland. Yes. Phil studies the photos transmitted by radio. The 3-toed configuration is consistent with prints documented at Honey Island in Louisiana. 2 swamps. 2 states. Similar morphology. As darkness falls and the snakes emerge, Phil and Heather send the townspeople home. The evidence collected by all 3 groups, hair, shells, prints, and the feeding ground, forms a pattern when plotted on a map. All 4 discovery sites are located on the edges of deep swampland behind the tree line. Phil and Heather position themselves in the central wetland between the 4 sites. If something is using these swamp corridors to move and feed, this is the intersection. Thermal cameras are live. Audio equipment is recording. The FLIR paints the swamp in shades of cold blue and black, then a heat signature appears, large, distinct, unmistakable against the cold backdrop of the swamp. Phil locks onto it and starts moving forward, keeping the FLIR steady. Heather tracks it on the secondary monitor. Huge heat signature. They close the distance, 50 meters, 40, 30. It vanishes. 1 second. The signature is blazing on the screen, the thermal profile of something big, warm-blooded, and stationary in the swamp. The next second the screen shows nothing. cold vegetation, empty darkness. Phil sweeps left, right, back to the original coordinates. Nothing gone completely. A thermal signature that size, something generating that much body heat, does not just evaporate. That's literally what they said the Fouke monster could do, Heather says, her voice barely above a whisper. Appear and disappear. They're in a second and gone. Do you know what's crazy is I got on the floor, huge heat signature. As they got closer to it, completely gone. That's literally what they said that the Fouke monster potentially could do, that it could appear and disappear there in a second and gone. This matches decades of witness testimony from residents who've described a creature that seems to materialize and dissolve at will. Phil does not have an explanation. He keeps sweeping. The screen stays dark, then the screeching starts. It fills the swamp from a direction neither of them can pinpoint, a guttural, rising sound with an almost vocal cadence. Not a fox. Not a bobcat. Not an owl. Something with lungs and range producing a vocalization that Phil and Heather have never encountered in any field investigation. They move toward it. The sound retreats, they push deeper. It recedes further. Every time they close the gap, whatever is producing the sound maintains its distance, aware of them, responsive to their movement, staying just beyond the range of their equipment. This goes on for hours. The screeching continues through the night, sometimes from one direction, sometimes seeming to come from multiple points simultaneously. Phil catches flashes on the floor. Massive thermal signatures that appear for seconds and dissolve before he can lock a bearing. Each time, the signature is large enough to be a substantial warm-blooded animal. Each time, it's gone before Phil can even call out coordinates. Heather records everything, keeping the audio level steady, building a catalog of every vocalization the swamp produces. Phil and Heather push through the swamp until dawn. They don't get eyes on the creature, but they don't need to, because what they captured on audio is about to change everything. When they finally extract and Heather sits down with the files, she pulls up the anonymous recording Mayor Purvis played in City Hall. She runs the field audio alongside it. The match is immediate. Frequency, cadence, tonal quality. 2 recordings made independently, one by an anonymous witness in the woods near Fouke, one by the investigation team deep in the swamp on a different night, and they align with precision. Phil watches over her shoulder. His arms are crossed, neither of them speaks for a long moment. Then Heather runs both recordings against a comprehensive database of documented wildlife vocalizations, mammal, bird, reptile, and amphibian native to the Arkansas wetlands, every large predator in the southeastern United States. Every primate on record anywhere in North America. No match. Nothing close. Phil exhales slowly. Heather closes the laptop and looks at him. That sound doesn't belong to any animal that science has catalogued. Phil doesn't argue. He doesn't offer an alternative explanation. For the first time across 3 investigations, the skeptic has nothing to counter with. The sound captured in the Fouke swamp, recorded on 2 separate occasions by 2 separate sources who never coordinated, does not belong to anything known. Across 3 states and 3 investigations, the evidence forms a pattern that resists easy dismissal. In Texas, thermal cameras and night vision captured light anomalies that a controlled headlight experiment could only partially explain. Phil's overhead sighting and the simultaneous camera failure remain unresolved. In Louisiana, a thermal drone filmed a large shape moving bipedally at 3 a.m. before dropping to all fours and disappearing. In Florida, ground nests showing primate-level construction and DNA results sitting in the 98.8% human-ape overlap zone refuse to close the case in either direction. And in Arkansas, a feeding ground littered with the remains of large animals, fresh 3-toed prints showing extraordinary force, and audio recordings matching each other, but matching nothing in any wildlife database, point toward a conclusion that no one on the team is fully comfortable stating out loud. This is not a full print. It's like he was running, the front part of his foot, like he was vaulting. It seems like it was sprinting. Exactly. It looks fresh, too. Something is moving through America's swamps. The thermal footage exists. The audio recordings exist. The bones are real, and the evidence, for the first time, is harder to dismiss than the legend itself. If you want to stay ahead of the next investigation, the next thermal capture, the next field recording, the next piece of evidence that surfaces from a swamp nobody was supposed to be searching, subscribe now and turn on notifications. This investigation is far from over. Music fades.